Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Untold, the show all about great individuals. And today we have poet Areej Saleh, who's an artistic side of things, and I am so curious to sit down with her and talk all about poetry.
Me too. And not only does she write poetry, but she performs it as well. And she's even created a space with her sister for poets and artists alike to connect and enjoy poetry and all other art forms, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, honestly, and as someone who has indulged in literature, specifically Arabic literature, I'm always, excited to sit down with people who advocate literature, whether it be in Arabic, English, any kind of language. Literature is such a forgotten art form that whenever we have a guest from this field, I'm like, okay, let's sit down, let's talk to them, let's see, let's give them the awareness.
I'm with you entirely because I'm also an advocate for literature, having studied it and having a great love of books and novels. But I'm curious to see how the poetry side of things will differ. And I'm curious to see what Areej has to say about her art form, forgotten or not, especially nowadays in the modern era.
Very well said, Lejane. Very great questions. We are going to take the answers after the break when we sit down with her. And we are back with Areej Saleh. So first, I do want to welcome you and thank you for joining us on The Untold.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
It's wonderful to have you here, Areej. Areej, I wanted to ask you about, your love of poetry and stuff. Where did it all begin?
Oh man, so poetry was like kind of huge, or at least slam poetry was kind of huge back in the day. On YouTube, there was a lot of slam poets who came out like early 2012s, I would say, 2010s. And I used to consume a lot of that. Like that was a big way for me to express myself and for me to see myself in the expressions of other people. So that was huge for me. Yeah.
And so what draw you, outside of slam poetry, the medium itself, poems, poetry, like what draw you into this kind of medium? Because I know for a lot of people, the first kind of literature they consume is novels, right? But you went to poetry, so...
Oh, I used to read a lot of novels too. I was a big Harry Potter fan. Were you guys Harry Potter fans?
I'm a big Harry Potter fan.
Really?
I'm a Ravenclaw, actually.
Amazing. Yeah, I used to be a really big novel reader. Poetry specifically, my dad was a poet, like a office poet.
Amazing.
So yeah, he used to write a lot of poetry. My grandfather too. And it was just normal for us to write poems, I guess. And my eldest sister was a poet. So poetry always called to me. And I think what's really cool about poetry versus novel versus long form writing is that I'm trying to tell you something, but I'm more trying to make you feel something instead of just telling you. Like I could tell you what happened, right? But I could tell you how I felt when it happened, and I could express to you in way fewer words how that felt. And I think that's the most important thing. Like poetry is about the story, sure, but it is about the feeling of what happens in the story. And I think that's really cool, to be succinct, right? To not have to say all the words all the time, every little detail, but to say, this is how I felt. And then someone saying, oh my God, I'll take that. And that's how I feel now. That's what's super cool about poetry.
I mean, it is, because poems are basically like emotions set to paper, in a way.
Yeah, I love that.
So I kind of agree with you. But you actually also do performance poetry. Like you started at the age of 15. So what brought you to that side of things?
Definitely slam poetry. Slam poetry is a little bit longer form than I would say like usual poetry or page poetry. A lot of people like to make that distinction. But the performance aspect I like because it adds another layer, right? So the writing and the language is important, but the performance aspect of how I'm going to say this word and how it changes from if I whisper it to if I scream it to if I pause right before or give you suspense right before. I think that part was really big for me because I am a performer. I feel performative all the time. Like I feel like I'm performing right now. Yeah, right. So being able to kind of work that tool as well as the language was important for me, but the performance aspect of it was huge for me. Yeah.
Yeah. You also say that, you enjoy performing on stage, but you also have duties and you also, created a space off stage for other artists to come and share along. That was a movement by you and your sister. So talk us through that. Like, what was the decision behind all of this?
Yeah, Kuwait Poet Society. We started when I was 15. My eldest sister, who was also a poet at the time, and I had just recently performed with another org, said, okay, we are poets. How do we hang out with other poets? So she just tweeted at the time, when Twitter was, you know, big. She tweeted, "Hey, does anybody want to come and share and read poetry together?" And like 20 people replied, and we met at a park, and we sat in a circle, and we all read our poems. We got feedback and compliments, and so that started a monthly hangout where we just came and shared as poets, as writers. Yeah, and then it grew from there. So we did the monthly stuff, then we did showcases with music and poetry. Then we started doing visual art mixed with poetry. So it was really awesome to see that grow organically. And it's a really big foundation to who I am today. And my sister is like one of my biggest role models. I don't know if she knows that. I think she might think that this is cool for me to say. I say it all the time, but she never believes me. But she is, yeah, she's one of my biggest role models. And being able to watch her do that was a huge inspiration for me to be doing art scene right now.
I mean, it's really cool that you have someone in your life who's so close to you that you can kind of follow after or kind of connect with on that same level. And the fact that you and your sister thought to take the initiative to actually create a scene and space for people to come together, I just want to thank you for doing that. Because nowadays it's a bit more common, but back in the day it was so much harder to find spaces for especially the arts, creative scenes, and you have to really look and find the right people who would lead you to the right people again. And it was like almost a maze sometimes to just find a place where you could feel seen or feel like you could connect. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah, I see that a lot. Yeah.
And so how did it go from just writing poetry to performing poetry? Like, how did that feel to you? And did it change when you had this space?
Yeah, I got addicted to it. Like I always was thinking about it. I think before a performance, you're very scared and you're anxious and you're wondering if your poem's good enough. And then right after a poem or right after a performance, you get this feeling like, oh, I just did what humanity must do. You know, it becomes this like huge like spiritual moment where you're thinking, oh, I just shared my raw self, my raw expression, and everybody was welcoming and shared it with me. And I think that amount of vulnerability makes you feel like you're on top of the world afterwards, especially when the feedback is so good. And people say like keep going, or I love that, or I really felt that. I think being vulnerable in front of people is, I mean, it doesn't have to be a grand thing, but it is why we're human, right?
Yeah, and I think that's something that's really specific to poetry, because you know we've mentioned novels before. In novels, you're not really putting your emotions, you know, you put in a story. But when it comes to poetry, it's your emotions at the moment, at the time. So whenever you're telling it to people, and then you see their reaction, their feedback, they're not, you know, criticizing your art per se. They're criticizing your emotions. You know,
Definitely.
they're criticizing what you are feeling. They're invalidating or validating your emotions. And I think that's where poetry feels more personal, you know, when you're taking reactions from the audience, whether they're, you know, humoring you, laughing with you, smiling with you, crying with you. It's all very raw because those are your emotions. This also goes back to my point about the next question, is that for a lot of people, they don't really know the sentimental value of poetry. There's a lot of misconceptions about it. So I do want to ask you, like, what are some misconceptions you've seen in terms of poetry and how people perceive them?
Oh man, I think a lot of people, when they think of poetry, they think of like classic, maybe English poetry, like Shakespeare and, you know, Robert Frost, the canon they consider. But I think it's cool for you to learn the foundation of where poetry really thrived, I would say. But it's gotten so much bigger than that, and it's so much wider also. Like at the time that a lot of classical poets were writing, there was poetry thriving in other parts of the world, right? And so it's not just that. And being stuck in that is part of an education system that's not really giving us the whole story, right? And so learning about modern poetry, but also other kinds of poetry, like other languages, and other cultures that have written poetry in different ways, is super important, and makes you realize that poetry is not just one thing, but it is like an entire movement, and is something that we interact with on an everyday.
Honestly, I agree. I think a lot of people aren't aware of all the intricacies of poetry, and not just in English, but in all the other languages. Would you say that you prefer English or Arabic poetry, or both? How does it fit into your vibe?
In reading, I'll read anything. Like I love reading all kinds of poetry. I do read often in translation because I feel like I can really grasp it very well, especially if it's like Russian poetry. I haven't learned that yet.
I mean, that's totally
maybe
understandable. Being
one
a vibe, so
yeah, maybe
One
one
day.
day I will.
you never know.
Yeah. But in Arabic, I feel when I interact with Arabic poetry, it's almost like I'm interacting with an entire universe of words and language and feelings that I haven't been able to. And so it is quite deeper than when I read only in English. I think bilingual poems really connect with me because I do speak in both. And so finding folks who write in that intersection is really important and is some of my favorite writings. Yeah.
I love how you highlighted the idea of, reading poetry from different places, because this reminds me of, if you're reading English poetry, it's very, different from Arabic poetry. But if you're reading Japanese haikus, which are, the Japanese kind of poetry, I'm not saying it's, sentence structure is the same as our poetry, but in terms of metaphors, in terms of analogies, they're using the same kind of, ideas. So poetry basically is kind of a language that unites us all, right?
Yeah.
Wherever you go, you can see the breadcrumbs of where it's similar or different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really cool way to put it. The way that we use language is always an important tool to be able to understand like a cultural climate for sure. And poetry is just like a microcosm of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's that way in all different forms of art, like art, poetry, writing, music. People always tend to focus on one group or one subgroup because that's like been the focus for so long. But there's a whole world out there, literally, and everywhere has their own way of speaking, of connecting. In the end of the day, it connects everybody around the world, and that's one of the things I love about the arts and poetry in general. And do you feel like you have any particular inspirations that help you feel that way?
In terms of my art, oh, it depends because I kind of do all kinds of things. I like to write music or make music. I like to write poetry. I'm a photographer also. So it depends on what you're asking me, like which medium. But I think I'm biased, but I think it's all poetry,
Yeah.
like at the root of it.
I mean, it kind of is.
It really is, right? I think it's all poetry. I have also thought a lot that it's all music, right? So poetry is I think music is constantly playing all around us, even if we can't hear it. And poetry is just translating that music into language. And music is translating that music into actual music. So if like, yeah. So I think my inspirations, I think I definitely touch into, because I like different mediums, I'm able to kind of translate my love for poetry into, let's say, photography. So if I can describe what I would describe in a poem in a photo, it's about that succinct feeling. It's about doing it without having to explain so much and putting it within a specific frame and a specific canvas where I can say, okay, here's the feeling. That's it. That's a poem. Here's a feeling. Here's a feeling. Here's a feeling. A photo. Here's a feeling. A song. Here's a feeling. And being able to kind of tell stories in a very short and succinct way, I think is where I find most of my inspo.
Yeah, definitely it seems like you're gravitating towards mediums that allow people to interpret, the emotions and the kind of idea instead of forcing them to feel something, and that's, both of those mediums, like you said, photography and poetry are so open to interpretations, right? Your own feelings and emotions that you took at the time, another viewer, another reader could interpret in a different side. So it's such a, I would say, fluid kind of, fields.
Definitely.
Yeah, with that being said, we are going to take a very quick break and we'll come right back after this one.
Welcome back from that short break. Areej, we were talking about poetry, what brought you into it, and how beautiful it is as an art form. But I actually want to ask you, because when you left for uni to go to Chicago, you actually studied civil engineering.
Yes, I did.
So how did that happen?
Can I say my dad?
Yeah.
No, it was a very practical decision. Like doing engineering at the time, especially. Now it's a little bit oversaturated, right? People talk about it being like,
There are a lot of engineers now.
yeah, don't do engineering now. Maybe that's not that's not advice to anybody. But yeah, at the time it was very practical. My dad also used to say you should always have a plan B. Like you can do whatever you want, just have a plan B to fall back on in case anything doesn't work out. So I went engineering. I don't think of it as a mistake. I never became an engineer. I don't think of it as a mistake. I think a lot of it was like the arts I did, especially in high school and college, it was always despite. You know what I mean? It was always, okay, here's my normal life where I do engineering, where I go to school. But the arts is where I expressed myself fully and in sort of a different headspace. I think they call right hemisphere, left hemisphere. And so when I was very right hemisphere, I would do my arts. I would like learn how to paint. I would play music. And then my left hemisphere was always an engineer. I was really good at math. I love math. I still think math is the coolest thing ever and is the basis of a lot of how art works. So I'm actually really privileged to be able to kind of have a balance of both. Because if you've ever met an artist who's never done any math before or anything kind of left hemisphere, it's almost like they don't want to interact, but they don't know how to interact. But being able to switch between makes me feel a little bit more like well-rounded, I guess. I feel more well-rounded.
And I think this is a very special moment that we can pass, you know, your father's words to a lot of the audience is that, you know, yes, if you want to pursue these, you know, art forms, you know, your hobbies and make a career out of them, it's always best decision to actually, you know, be in a field that you can rely on if things go south. And that's brilliant advice, right? He set you on path for civil engineering, but he also didn't stop on your path when you became an artist. And like you mentioned before, your sister is a role model, so it seems like your family are a great support circle. So that's major thanks to all of them.
Yeah.
I do want to go back to another point, you know, one of your hidden talents as well, because we were made aware that you've built a coffee trailer by hand. So talk us through all of that.
Oh, coffee trailer by hand is too big, but no, when I was in engineering, I started working at a coffee shop because the place that I was in was not very social. Like everybody was kind of, if you've ever been to a suburb in the States, it's like everybody just goes to work, comes home, goes to sleep, goes to work, comes home, goes to sleep. So the best way to be social was to get a job. So I got a job at a coffee shop. I started bussing tables, like I was just cleaning tables, and then I worked my way up to bar. And I loved coffee. I love coffee. Like, but to go even back to my family, it's 2 cups of coffee a day with my family. It's where we interacted, where we had all of our best conversations. So I grew up with the love of coffee, and learning about the craft of coffee was huge for my like artistic self, right? Because there's the senses are all interacting when you're making coffee. So you smell the coffee beans, you get to taste it, you get to touch the coffee beans, you get to pour the latte art. So I really loved it. I worked my way up. I started, and I'm very bold. Like I'm like unabashedly bold. And I think that's kind of scares my parents a little bit, or my family a little bit. Because they're like, why are you doing all of that? I'm like, it's just because I want to. And being, I mean, having that safety net, like you bring my family up, having that safety net allows you to be as bold as I have been. So yeah, I got a loan. I bought a trailer, and then I learned how to plumb. Like I learned plumbing.
Wow.
I learned how to do electricity within the trailer. I put an espresso machine in it, and then I drove around, yeah, Chicago in the suburbs selling coffee. I was making it. And it was just me and a friend at the time. Yeah, it was one of the best projects I've ever done. It was awesome. And it was where I got started in like building something just by myself, having the support around me, but seeing the vision and then following that vision. Coffee definitely started that for me.
That's honestly crazy, girl. That's wild. Like, I had no idea you even built it from scratch. That's not easy to do. I think that's kind of what you're talking about, being well balanced on both sides, being able to dive into both fields, because plumbing, wow.
Yeah, girl, you ever drilled? Like I was learning how to drill, like and tow a trailer. like I didn't even know cars could do that. You know that you could connect a trailer to a car and tow it.
Like any car?
Well, I was towing it with a Toyota RAV. Like that's not something that you do. That's not something that you usually see. So I had to learn a lot of the technical stuff too. Yeah. And again, yeah, it is about me being well-rounded because I could talk about, you know, the wattage of what I need at a specific fare or whatever. And then I could also pour the lattes. So it is important, especially as a small business owner. I think like you have to really know everything. You have to know how to do the finances while also being able to do the technical stuff while also understanding the creative. So yeah, coffee definitely started that for me.
And do you think, you know, being in all of these kind of fields, all of these mediums, bled into your artistic side, or would you consider yourself someone who separated the two worlds, you know, between those kind of hobbies and your, you know, art form, poetry specifically?
No, everything blends into everything. Yeah, I'm an artist all the time, and I'm a mathematician or an engineer or whatever, a logician all the time. I think like seeing the world in different ways just allows you to kind of see all the layers, or more than just one layer. You're able to see all the layers, which makes me feel like I could talk to anyone, which is really awesome to be able to talk to anyone and connect with them on in the language that they use. Is yeah, something I'm really proud of.
And you should be. It's a really cool talent to have because it is a skill, by the way, what you're talking about and describing. And I personally actually hate math and numbers and stuff. Like, I am aware of how important it is, and it's kind of like math and physics are the language of the universe in a way, but my brain just doesn't wrap around the actual numbers themselves. I used to have recurring nightmares about numbers when I was back in school doing math. So I leaned heavily towards the more linguistic side of things in general. But I do have a healthy awareness that everything fits in together. And I love what you said about how everything is art to you as a poet and stuff, because it's true, because literally every daily moment that we're around is art. But your many hats don't stop here, because I heard that when you came back from Kuwait, you actually started teaching.
Yeah, I was a math teacher and I loved it. I loved it. Oh, I loved it. I loved being a math teacher because teaching is performance and you get to do it like 4 or 5 times a day and it's just a performance. So I used to like go home and lay down on my bed and think about, oh, I have to teach about complex numbers. How do I make this the best class ever? And I wasn't the best teacher all the time, of course, but I did make sure to connect, because what's really annoying about math or math education is the same about what's annoying about language education, is that it doesn't connect to the everyday context, right? So you guys learned about linear algebra, right? Or like x equals something.
Yeah.
Why? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I didn't know how to explain.
I forgot everything about that.
Yeah.
To tell you,
Like
as soon as I went to the literature route, I was like, okay, I'm done with math.
yeah.
Goodbye.
Same.
It's so out of context. And so my main job as a math teacher was to put the stuff that I could into context, and a lot of the education system didn't even allow me to do that, was to put the things I could into context and say, okay, we're learning this because this is what calculators do on a day-to-day. So you're learning about the program within the calculator and why the things work out in the way that they do. So yeah, I was a math teacher for 2 years. I think about my students all the time. I think being around kids is like, oh my God, I think it really reminds you that humans are amazing. Like we are so amazing in the ways that we consume what people around us are talking about, and then consume the education that we're in. I loved it. I taught sixth grade, 7th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade, so I got all of it, or I got like a cross range of it, and I loved it. I loved it so much.
And you know, speaking of loving it, you also made the leap towards creativity. So what was, you know, the motivation behind taking such a huge leap and a huge risk as well?
I really don't like having to be somewhere at a specific time.
Yeah.
I feel you.
I really don't like it, and this is like huge privilege for me to be able to kind of work from myself, or work for myself, but having to be there at it's like 6:45 in the morning.
It's too
and
early.
I was driving to Farbania at the time. I hated it. I loved doing it, but if I could do that like freelance, that would be great. But I was always late, and I don't like working under an administration. So a lot of that came from that. came from the idea that I know how to do this by myself, and I had done the small business kind of stuff previously with the coffee trailer. So I just said, okay, I can make my way through this, and I kind of became a marketer on accident while I was teaching, and so I started picking up freelance clients, because marketing is really just understanding people. And it's so easy to understand people, especially in Kuwait. Like, it's so easy to understand what people want and how you can make them want it. And so I picked up freelance clients, and then I said, okay, I'm doing too much work. Like, I would wake up, go to school or go to work, and then I would work until midnight. And it was too much.
Yeah, you don't want to burn yourself out.
For sure. But you kind of need to, if you want to make the leap, you kind of have to really work at it for a long time while doing other stuff, so that you can, build the savings, make sure that you're safe financially for you to do the leap,
No, that makes a lot of sense. And first of all, I want to say that I think if you were my math teacher, I would have resonated with math a lot more than I probably did, and maybe things would be different. But apart from that, from all that, everything you're saying, I feel kind of connects back to the circle that you created, and it's opened up to like comedy nights, music nights, writing, sketching. It's more than just poetry now as well. So what do you think makes people drawn to that?
Specifically to what we're working on, me and like my group or a group of the best creatives I've ever met. What makes us, I feel like we're a DIY. So we're do it yourself. So instead of it being, you've gone to shows before where it feels like, okay, I'm gonna go, or going to the theater, the movie theater. You go, you know that this is an experience where you're an audience member, you watch something and then you leave.
Yeah.
But with the stuff that we're doing, because it's DIY, because you can kind of see us doing it ourselves, right? Where it's like a rickety stage. Someone said that they were sitting on the floor at the beginning of our of the org. It feels like you're part of it, and I think there's not many spaces where you can come in, experience something, and also feel like you're a part of building something. And so that's always been important for us, that you're not just coming in, okay, taking a workshop and then you leave and that's it. But you're actually part of building something bigger than just the individuals who are interacting with each other on a day-to-day. I think that's what's cool about DIY, is that like someone can come in and say, hey, can I help you? And we could say, yeah, we really need your help. And then they'll join in and they'll be part of the quote unquote team, right? So it's always that interaction of like accessibility. Like, it feels more accessible when something feels like it was made by other humans to experience, to feel a sense of community.
Yeah, and we also want to take the moment to thank you for offering such a space and such a stage for such a very forgotten kind of community, right? Especially here locally. But also we do want to thank you for joining us on the Untold, because unfortunately we have run out of time. So many thanks again.
Thank you so much. Thank you. These questions were also really awesome.
I mean, you were awesome. So I think it's all you. And it was a pleasure to have you. And I want to thank you for your bold and beautiful words today.
Thank you.
And, you just keep doing what you're doing, because it really is amazing.
I appreciate you guys. And it was really good to meet you.
Thank you. It was great to meet you as well. With that in mind, we are going to take a very quick break. We'll come right back after this one. And with that, it's the end of today's episode of The Untold. Thank you for tuning in. But most importantly, thank you for our guest for being with us and honoring us today.
Honestly, talking to her was a breath of fresh air. I loved the way she expressed herself. Everything she had to say was so beautiful and bold, as she likes to be. And I think it really showed whenever she spoke about everything she did. And not only that, but she spoke and did so many different things, which is really amazing.
Yeah, honestly, I think today's episode could be under the title of, experiment, however ways you want, because you never know what kind of path you're going to be drawn into. And I find that really, a happy thought and happy medium to end on, right? A lot of people continue going on their lives and they're like, okay, I regret not doing this and that. But mashallah, she was like, okay, if I think of something, I'm going to try it. That was very, a happy moment.
It was, especially since she came from two very opposite spectrums. She's a lover of mathematics, she taught math, she studied civil engineering, and yet she writes poetry, performs poetry, MCs for open mic nights, and even created a circle of artists to gather. And she even mentioned that she does art as well, and music. So it's amazing seeing someone so well-rounded and who can just sort of create as she goes and finds art in everything.
It was amazing sitting down with her. It was amazing to have this episode. Hopefully you've had an amazing time. With that, it's the end of our time here from the team of the Untold. Until the next one, goodbye for now.
Goodbye and see you next time.